So, what is up, guys? It's pop culture lore, here, and I'm gonna be talking about CBR's top six best Spider-Man stories, of the past 60 years, which, for the main part, covers around the entire time Spider-Man has been around. So, first, we're gonna start off with the origin story. Now, the origin story is timeless. Everybody knows it. It's the main reason he is Spider-Man was Uncle Ben's death. So it starts off with Peter Parker. He was bullied. He was a bit of a wallflower. He's an outcast. People don't like him too much. He goes on a field trip, gets bitten by a radioactive spider. He gains powers. The only thing he can't do is shoot webs. So, like most of us, that when we get powers, he tries to make money off of it. He becomes a wrestler and he ends up making, a name for himself. He gets famous. He becomes a TV star. But he's always wearing a mask. He wears a mask. Nobody knows who he is. So when the robber breaks in and steals everything, like all the money, they blame him because they don't know who he is. He's wearing the mask, and they say it was him. That robber that he let it get away ended up killing Uncle Ben. So he picks up, that with great power comes great responsibility. He learns that he has to be responsible for his actions. He learns, that every inaction he does can lead to something worse. Then we have the death of Gwen Stacy. That it's a big reason why people began to take comics more seriously. He he learned to not be reckless, to be more careful, to be more thought out, to think before every not every action, but to think before he just rushes in to save people because it shows on panel when he sends his web, it shows a snap in her neck. Then they say, oh, the Green Goblin killed her before he even got here. But it really teaches him, that him being a superhero is gonna have consequences on the people he loves, so he has to be more careful with it. And like I said, it people, began to take it more serious. Comics were serious. That they could be told, good stories. More serious stories. Then we have Secret Wars and Venom. Now, Secret Wars is not a Spider-Man event. It's a Marvel event that happened back in the day. But it connects into Venom because Spider-Man gets his black suit in this event. He he gets the symbiote. He finds the symbiote. Now later they went on and said that Deadpool had found it first and then placed it back. But this is, Parker finds a symbiote here. He he doesn't start off being a bad guy. I'm talking about Venom. He's bonded to Spider-Man, and Spider-Man eventually finds out by going through the Fantastic Four that it's alive, and it has a mind of its own. But at first he didn't know because he just felt more tired, and it turns out that the symbiote was going out at night and beating up criminals. So he ends up splitting from it, and it bonds to Eddie Brock, who becomes Venom. And Venom has become one of the most popular characters that Marvel has. He has two movies. He had the amazing run by Donny Cates, The King in Black, and he's become super popular. It's not I wouldn't say he's as popular as Spider-Man, but he is up there. He started off in here, so it deserves to be here because of the impact it had with Venom. Then here's where it goes wrong. This is where CBR begins to go wrong. The Clone Saga. The Clone Saga with essentially they try to, push Peter to the side and give him a happy ending, a happy send off. Mary Jane is pregnant, she's gonna give birth. Ben Riley's the new Spider-Man, he's gonna take over for Peter. And then they say, oh, he's the real Peter, and then Peter's a clone. Gives Spider-Man mantle to Ben Riley, but then it's revealed that Peter's the real one, and then Ben Riley's the clone. And it's a mess that was drawn out for 2 years, where it's revealed at the very end, after 2 years, like I said, of, just complete utter messes, that the dead Norman Osborn came back and decided to mess with Peter he said, to make him crazy. And it's a very disappointing story. It does not deserve to be in the top 6. It does not deserve even to be in the best. It's a mess, and it's where honestly, a lot of people just hate clones when it comes to Spider-Man, because it's not good. No, they didn't. It wasn't thought out. It was just a mess. Then we have Civil War, Back in Black, One More Day, Rainy Day. They all roll into one another. Talk connected. So even though it's 4 different, you know, it's the same story. So we begin with Peter Parker. He sides with Tony Stark in Civil War, and he trusts him so much he reveals his identity to the public. And using this, Kingpin puts a hit out on Peter Parker, where Aunt May ends up getting shot. Parker dons the black suit, breaks into the prison, beats up Wilson Fisk. What? That's Back in Black. No. And so Aunt May is dying, which leads right into One More Day. Peter Parker goes and sells his marriage with Aunt May and with Mary Jane to save Aunt May, because that's what Mephisto said he wanted. Now this was clearly Marvel wanted to bring back a single Peter Parker. They didn't want to divorce him, because then that would make the character feel older. So they said that Mephisto wanted the marriage, and that was his price for Peter Parker saving Aunt May. And going after this, Peter Parker, still has history with Mary Jane, but they are no longer married. Mephisto took that. And Aunt May is fine, even though she's been dying and she's an old lady for years. He sells his marriage for her, which leads right into Brand New Day, where they try to, say, oh, blah, 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 retcon, Mephisto only, took the marriage. Doctor Strange, he was actually the real reason that everybody forgot that Peter Parker was Spider-Man, but it doesn't fix the issue where they took his marriage with Mary Jane, and just, that's not in character for Peter. Then we lead into the Kindred Saga. Now the Kindred Saga touches on stories that everybody hates. I said, but One More Day. But it touches on sins past, where Norman Osborn is revealed to have an affair with Gwen Stacy before she died, and that the real reason that she had killed her was because he was hiding his kids from him, Gabriel and Sarah Stacy. Now these two, in this story, one of the reasons that people, I'd say, like part of it, Kindred Saga, was because it's revealed that the AI from Legacy of Evil, Harry Osborn, was the true, puppet master behind them, but that also Mephisto is kind of behind them. And essentially, Harry Osborn, the AI, tricked his father into thinking he had an affair with Gwen Stacy, and made these two new bodies where they serve as vessels for his AI as revenge, because Norman sold Harry Osborn's soul to Mephisto as a way to make sure Oscorp didn't fail, and he managed to succeed and become, rich and have everything he wanted, power. So Harry is in hell. Well, Harry's soul is in hell, and that the Harry we've been following with Slot's run this entire time after pre One More Day, post One More Day, was a clone. That Harry has been a clone. So Harry Osborn still died when he was the Green Goblin. He died then, but the one that came back was a clone, and it's a mess because it's so Nick Spencer teases at the idea that he's gonna undo One More Day, and then he doesn't touch it. The the kindreds are it's mostly infer that they're vessels for the AI, but at the same time they're also their own people. And you have to read it. I'd say 2 3 times so you would understand what's happening with them. And then at the end, all that's revealed that Mephisto wanted the marriage because Mayday Parker was going to be the one to put an end to Mephisto. So Nick Spencer does this whole long out, drawn out story where he doesn't even undo what he kept hinting at, where he hints at Peter Parker having a ring to propose to Mary Jane, and he never does. He's it's never done, and it just ends with them kissing in the sky. And it Nick Spencer's run had its moments. I liked how it started. Like that he killed off Craven and then brought in Craven's clone slash son to be the new Craven. That way, because they even in story, he even says, Craven's last hunt, where they refer to him how he died, killed himself. Then, um, the Sin Eater coming back, it was pretty interesting, him cleansing people's souls. He cleansed Norman Osborn. Norman Osborn is no longer the Green Goblin. He's now, a good person. Now, they said 6, but they added the number 7, because, like I said, all they care about is fluff and money. CBR is not. They don't. They have some good articles, but then some are just, you can tell they're pumped out for attention, for money, because, like I said, this is 7, and Spider-Man Beyond is not honestly that good. It follows right after, Nick Spencer's run, having Peter Parker and Ben Reilly face the UFOs, and Peter Parker is struck by radiation since he doesn't have an advanced suit like Ben Reilly. He gets struck by radiation and he ends up in the hospital. And then we find out that Ben Reilly is now working for the Beyond Corporation, since they bought off the Spider-Man name off of essentially Parker Industries, which is no longer a thing at this point. And they want, Ben Reilly to be their hero, their poster boy. And they gave him a teched out suit and everything. And it would have been good if they didn't draw it out for too long. But it wouldn't have been the best, but it would have been a good story. But they took it too far. It was, I believe, around 20 issues and like 5 tie-ins that honestly don't deserve to be there, where you could have done it in like 10 issues. You could have done the whole story, and then you could tell they only put in Morbius because he had the upcoming movie about Morbius. And they had a good setup for Ben Reilly in the story, He Beyond Corporation turns out to be a shady company. We all saw that coming. But they end up cutting around in his mind, erasing memories. And they had him around issue 85, 86. I can't remember the exact issue. He's missing huge gaps in his memories, but he remembers parts. He knows that he loves what was her name? Janine? I think that's how you say it. And he states, I don't want to be, a bad person. I want to be what she sees. I want to live up to what she sees. So they set it up where he no longer, was gonna be Peter Parker light. No, he didn't have to live under Peter Parker's shadow, that he wasn't the same motivations. Uncle Ben died, and great responsibility comes great power, blah, blah, blah. I mean, great power comes great responsibility. But they undo it. At the end, he just becomes a new villain called Chasm, where he will now, he wants to take revenge on Peter Parker because he was not, Peter Parker didn't help him. Now, Peter Parker didn't help him because he believed that, you know, there could be something more going on with the helmet that they were going to use to transfer more memories back into Ben Riley's mind. And Ben Riley says, no, these are my memories too. They are breaking the helmet, and Ben Riley gets stuck in the lab. It blows up, and he becomes a villain called Chasm because he has no longer any memories of anything that happened. But they had set it up where he could have, instead of living up, to Peter and Uncle Ben, he has to live up to standards set by the woman he loves that knows him even though he doesn't remember everything. So they essentially doing to Ben Riley what DC did to Wally West for the longest time. They treat him like a mess. They turn him into a villain. Like I said, Heroes in Crisis, they somewhat turned Wally West into a villain. It wasn't in character for him. They the whole thing. Marvel's treating him like their own, like Wally West. So I would change these last four. I would take them out. They're not the best. They're not. They're not good. I would swap out the Clone Saga for Kraven's Last Hunt. One of the most serious Spider-Man stories ever told, where Kraven the Hunter finally manages to somewhat beat Peter Parker. He traps him in the coffin. He takes up the black suit for himself. He's wearing a black suit. And then when Peter Parker breaks out of the coffin, beats Kraven. Kraven, admits that he's the better hunter, and Kraven kills himself at the end. With a shotgun, he kills himself. And it's a really good send off for the character. Then instead of this, I would say Superior Spider-Man. Now, Superior Spider-Man happened during Dan Slott's run. Dan Slott has set up huge hints here and there throughout his run that, Dr. Octopus was going to make a comeback. He was coming back. He has something planned. So, Dr. Octopus is dying of cancer. He decides to steal Spider-Man's body. Once he's inside of Peter Parker's body, he sees all the memories. He realizes, Peter Parker did good. I will become a better Spider-Man. I will become Superior Spider-Man. And it shows essentially the redemption of, one of the most popular Spider-Man villains. Becoming a good guy, but not in, the most common way that all good guys are. He uses stuff like henchmen, he uses villains to fight his fights. He uses robots throughout the city. He's more threatening, more menacing, you can tell. He he goes back, gets a PhD for Peter Parker. He essentially starts off Parker Industries, and it shows what Peter Parker could be like if he wasn't held back. It shows, Peter Parker has so much potential. He could honestly be one of the greatest superheroes. But, you know, since Otto Octavius isn't Peter Parker, everything eventually goes back to the status quo. He can't be Norman Osborn. So Peter Parker comes back and he beats the Green Goblin because Otto Octavius did not want to risk, endangering his love interest at the time. I can't think of her name at the top of my head right now, but he says, "You, Peter Parker, are the superior Spider-Man. I know that now, and for her to live, you must be the one to save her. So it's the return of Peter Parker, but it shows a side, that honestly, even though at the time it was a bit controversial because people didn't like it, it becomes, good after because, it was only a temporary thing. And it shows, a side of a villain that we hadn't really fully seen before. Then instead of the Kindred Saga, I would probably put If This Be My Destiny, where we get, turns out that the master planner was Dr. Octopus, and he was behind everything. But the main reason is for the moment where it shows Peter Parker picking up the rubble that is on top of him. And that scene has become synonymous with it. Which shows that despite everything that's going on with him, will endure. He will keep fighting, he will keep going, he won't give up. He has people to save, people that depend on him to do the right thing. And then, like I said, even though they said 6, they put a 7 on. For this one, I would put maybe, let's see, I would say Spider-Man No More, where he gives up the cow. He no longer wants to be Spider-Man. It shows that, Spider-Man eats up at his human, his Peter Parker relationship that he can't keep alive because he's Spider-Man. He eventually picks it up because he realizes that he's Spider-Man because it's the right thing to do. It's the responsible thing to do. He learns that doing the right thing won't always be the easiest thing, but he does it because it's right. He has the power, so he must be responsible with it. So, my whole point, of reviewing this list and, giving you better stories to read is mostly because I've been collecting comics for a while now, probably 4 or 5 years. I started off in high school, and I don't want CBR, spreading false information around. Because if people see this and they think Clone Saga is good because of this list, and when they read it, they find out it's bad, they get put off and they don't want to read more comics. Now, the more money that their runs make, they'll keep going. And a lot of the times, you see runs here and there that are really good. Like I said, Superior Spider-Man was probably the best thing that Dan Slott did. And honestly, another reason is because I enjoy this. I've seen other YouTubers that they talk about what they like, and they can make a living out of it. I enjoy talking about this. I already do it as a hobby, so I'm, might as well inform other people that don't know about it. And, I have this channel be somewhere you can learn about characters, about pop culture that you may not, be very, very familiar with, may not know too much, or you may be familiar with, but there is some stuff that you may not know, and you're curious about and you would like to learn. But other than that, that's it.